Now, when I did part 1 of the series, a lot of people commented saying I mixed the definitions of a psychopath and a sociopath quite a bit, and although I totally get where you guys are coming from, they both do share a lot of traits. Both don't really know how to empathize or share another person's feelings, and they don't have a great sense of right and wrong. A psychopath doesn't have a conscience, whereas a sociopath does. So a psychopath would steal your things and not feel bad about it, but a sociopath would feel some guilt about it, but not enough to stop themselves from actually doing it. Now, not all psychopaths are killers or violent, they're more manipulative and reckless than they are violent, but that doesn't rule the possibility out altogether. What is up, you guys? Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Aben Hassan and welcome back to another video. Why am I wearing a hoodie in like 30-degree weather? Beats me. Guess I'm dumb. Today we're back with the top 10 scary psychopaths that are roaming free part 2. Starting us off at number 10 is DERIK Lord. Things tend to get ugly whenever a lot of money, inheritance and family are involved. Back in 1992, 17-year-old DERIK Lord along with David Muir joined a plot created by his school friend Darren Hooneman. The plan was to murder Darren's mum and grandmum so he could collect part of a $4 million inheritance. The two boys took a ferry over to Darren's house wherein his mum invited them in. The duo proceeded to hit the victims on the heads with a crowbar, knocking them unconscious. They then used kitchen knives to stab them in the throat, leaving them to bleed out and die. DERIK was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 10 years and maintained he was innocent throughout everything. All his appeals got dismissed, yet finally in 2018 he was granted escorted absences to visit his family. David Muir, his literal murderer accomplice, has been free on full parole since 2003. These two men mercilessly killed their friends' family for money they weren't even gonna end up getting. I think the biggest villain here is Darren for even thinking of the whole thing, let alone planning it. Who can go through with actually killing their own mother and grandmother? Coming in at number 9 are the family men. This one comes from a now deleted Reddit user who said not only was her dad a psychopath, her older brother was too, and that makes sense since psychopathy can be genetically inherited as well. She shared that over the years her dad would beat the whole family, and by the time she turned 4 her mum managed to finally divorce him. You'd think now was the time where got better, but it actually got worse since her older brother was an even bigger monster than their dad. He had zero empathy or remorse for a single thing he did, and it's not like he didn't know what was right or wrong, he just didn't care. The user was admitted to the hospital multiple times for injuries like a broken nose, 3rd-degree burns, internal bleeding, and so on. Eventually her school realized something was very off and called the state on her mum, which launched an investigation into the household. To give you an idea of how much of a psychopath her brother was, she shared this flashback. Picture laying down on the grass, and when you look over you see someone coming at you full speed on their bike. There's no time to move as the bike goes over your face. I vividly remember his evil smile and look of pleasure as he looked down at me while running my face over. At number 8 we have the patient. This one was shared by Redditor Infact, who works as a nurse. One day she met a patient who was brought in by the police since he had just broken into a family's home while they were still inside. The guy's electrolytes were all over the place and it seemed like he had no recollection of breaking into this house. Anyway, the dude was getting jittery, but the hospital had a 4 risk policy, so an alarm would go off if his feet touched the floor. The user's trying to keep him calm because she knows the alarm is just gonna send him over the edge. While they talk, the guy starts telling her how he's an evil person and he knows it. His family cat was found mutilated and he told his sister the dog had done it when really he had ripped the cat to shreds to make it look like the dog had done it. He went on to say he wants to hurt people and that he didn't break into the house to rob the family, he broke in to kill them. Naturally, the user told the hospitalist and psychologist all of this, yet he was still discharged the next day and is still out there somewhere. Cool, gotta love it, no one cares. Filling at number 7 slot is the minister. This one's some Reddit user made you read P to share the story of her dad. Now, he was a charming man who everyone loved and no one thought there was anything off about him, but behind closed doors it was a completely different story. When the dad was younger he spent time at a mental institution for frequently killing animals during his teenage years and assaulting his dad. But because he was underage it was never put on his record, so on paper he was completely clean. When the user was a kid the dad used to sexually assault her, and if she ever talked back or refused he would beat her brother as revenge, all the while enjoying all of that. The parents got divorced and the dad once stalked and kidnapped the user from the mum simply because he could. He has zero emotional impulse control and eventually became a meth addict. He's currently a minister somewhere with that background. Nice. Now number 6 is Penny BOUDREAU. Back in January of 2008, Penny was dating Vernon McCumbet and living in Nova Scotia with a 12-year-old daughter Carissa. The mother and daughter had a strained relationship, and one day Penny drove Carissa to a roadside, tackled her, strangled her with twine, and killed her. Carissa's last words were, "Mommy, don't," which really breaks my heart. When she got home, she told Vernon that Carissa had vanished from the car after she went out to get something, and they reported her missing. Penny tried to make it look like a sexual assault gone wrong, but there was no evidence of rape when the body was found 2 weeks later, so that was ruled out pretty quickly. The BOUDREAU's neighbors had Penny arguing with Vernon, and they called it in, and the two were soon arrested on suspicion for the murder. Penny told police that Vernon had given her an ultimatum to choose him or Carissa, and so she killed her daughter to try and save their relationship. That was an epic lie. Vernon had told her to do something about her relationship with her daughter since it wasn't productive. He never said kill her. An undercover sting operation eventually captured Penny confessing on tape, and she was charged with the murder and received a life sentence. In 2018, she was granted escorted leave and may get unescorted absences in the future. Escorted or not, I just don't like the fact Penny is out there. If she kills her daughter over her boyfriend saying figure out your relationship, I don't know what else she'd be doing if she was given the opportunity. Coming in at number 5 is Faye Dunaway. Famous American actress Faye Dunaway has received many accolades for her work, but that's not the only place she shines. She's known for her erratic behavior that has led fans to believe she may be a psychopath. Now, I'm in no way diagnosing her with psychopathy at all. I'm not qualified to do that. I'm just exploring what people have said online. The Mommy Dearest actress has a reputation of being narcissistic and cold. Chinatown director Roman Polanski described her as a gigantic pain in the ass. Betty Davis called her very unprofessional, totally impossible, and uncooperative. Faye has been known to be rude to service personnel, constantly saying things like, "Don't you know who I am?" So I mean, the big ego is up there as well. Insiders in the films she's been in said it was common knowledge that she was a monster on and off set. No one dared approach her for fear of being verbally attacked and abused. Is all this enough to convince me she's a psychopath? Not really, but so many people are convinced, and if they're right, then I mean, she's still out there just talking daggers into the people around her, so I mean, do with that what you will. At number 4 is The Dad. This one was shared by Redditor Little Grey, who shared that her dad is a psychopath as well as a stereotypical emotionless When she was in middle school, she was hanging around in her backyard and accidentally stepped on a stick, and half of it got stuck in her foot. That actually happened to me. I was playing in the park and this giant stick got stuck in my leg right below my knee, and I just got home and pulled it out. And I felt like I was pulling out some knife out of me, and I felt pretty badass. My dad was like, "Can we sterilize that?" And I was like, "But I just pulled it out all cool, you know?" Now, as a software engineer, her dad would go on site to help build databases to make patient data digital. Keep in mind, this was like the 80s and 90s, so this was old. But this gave him such a complex about not being a doctor because he thought in his mind he was smart enough and qualified to be one. He started stealing tools and equipment from work and would wear scrubs at home all the time. He then refused to take the user to the ER and insisted on working on her foot himself. He heated up medical scissors and cut up her heel while literally playing doctor. The user was literally screaming in pain, and her mum came in and told her to keep it down because she was on the phone. Now, Dad's egotistical. He cares more about being a doctor, so much so that he doesn't feel guilt over stealing things, and he thinks practicing surgery on his daughter is more important than her pain, getting her foot fixed, or any of that crap. So I mean, alright then. Filling at number 3 slot is The Ex. This one's from Reddit user mshap_, who shared that she dated a psychopath when she was 19 for around 4 years on and off. They met on the subway and he introduced himself, told her he was 21 years old, they talked, started hanging out, and eventually began to date. The user noticed his psychopathic tendencies over time, but I mean, at least she noticed. Okay, it took her a while, but at least she noticed. He would always conveniently forget his wallet, so she'd have to pay for their meals. He'd always lie to try and come out on top of a situation, and if she caught him red-handed, he would gaslight her and convince her she was being delusional. The user tried to break things off, but he would weasel his way back into her life by waiting for her by the train she took every morning, and he would refuse to leave and stop following her unless she had lunch with him. At the end, she found out he had literally lied about everything: his name, his age, and more. After all that, he didn't realize he even did anything wrong in order to make things work while still being in a long-term, long-distance relationship with someone else that he had also lied to her about. Pierre. This one comes from Redditor Melissa Bear, who said this guy she went to middle school with displayed a lot of psychopathic traits. I read this story and I was like, this guy is straight up a devil. Firstly, he had this blank stare in his eyes all the time. He was never truly looking at anyone, even when he was looking at them. He would always try and goad people into attacking him just so he could beat the crap out of them and not get in trouble for it, since it was all self-defense. One time he started fighting this guy with glasses and ended up breaking them. The glass got stuck in the guy's hand and he continued to punch the other guy and lacerate his face. The last day the user saw him, he kicked the feet of this girl that had MS and watched her fall down the stairs and just stood there and laughed at her. The teacher thankfully saw this and he was expelled. And finally, at number 1 is KARLA HOMOLKA. I used to listen to this serial killer podcast on Spotify, and one of the first episodes I ever listened to was about KARLA HOMOLKA and her husband Paul Bernardo. What were they, the Ken and Barbie killers, I believe? That was their name. Now between 1987 and 1990, Paul around 10 to 15 girls in the Scarborough and Mississauga area of Toronto. The last girl escaped and got a good enough look at Paul to help police create a composite sketch of the man. Bernardo was questioned but was ultimately let go since the police thought he was an unlikely suspect. Oh no, baby, what is you doing? You had him! When KARLA and Paul started dating, she wanted to help him satisfy his urges, so she would help lure girls in so Paul could have his way with them. After their engagement, Paul started liking KARLA's younger sister Tammy, who they eventually sedated, assaulted, and then killed. KARLA wanted to gift Tammy's virginity to Paul for Christmas, so you can gather how messed up in the head she truly was. The next year, the Bonnie and Clyde-esque couple kidnapped and murdered Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. The duo were questioned but let go, and it was eventually Paul's DNA sample that concluded he was the Scarborough rapist. In May of '93, KARLA was arraigned on 2 counts of manslaughter but served a lesser sentence due to her cooperation on the case against Paul. KARLA's been out free since 2005, and by 2017 she was volunteering at an elementary school in Montreal. I'm sorry, this convicted murderer and accomplice rapist is out there teaching kids. No. And that is it for today's video, guys. Psychopaths, there are a lot of them and they are running wild and running free. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of just normal functioning psychopaths. I read a lot of cases about that as well, and they're like, oh, I'm a self-diagnosed psychopath, here's my current day. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. As always, I'm your host Eamon Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Now at number 6 is Penny BOUDREAU. Now, BOUDREAU? Yeah. Now at number 6,